My name is Micka Burkhart, and on September 24th, I caught the Tennessee State Record Blue Cat. So this trip started out just like any other trip. I always do my prep the night before, like hooking the boat up, catching the bait, loading the coolers, all except for putting my Mad Katz rods in the boat because I don't want people with sticky fingers coming by and helping themselves. But the next morning we got up, not too early, not too late. You know, we weren't worried about the morning bite or the afternoon bite. We were just going to go out and go fishing. So once we got the rest of the boat loaded up, we headed down to the Cumberland River, Stewart County area, and we put the boat in the water and we started fishing our stretches of river. So the bait that I was using was actually not ideal. It was about, I had a bunch of 6 to 8 inch skipjack, and I like to have them slightly bigger than that, but that's all I caught, so that's what I used. I was dragging with planer boards. I was running only 2 planer boards and one straight out the back, but I always try to look at the ledges, you know, try to keep one on top of the shallow part of the ledge, one down the ledge and one down the deeper part of the ledge. And that seems to be, well, a couple weeks before that, that has worked out well. We get out there, we catch fish, we catch nice fish. And so we were just going to do that because I knew we would at least catch some fish. And then, you know, the Mad Katz rods that I get, I always try to break them in with a fish. So, and I've got quite a few of them that I still got to break in. But, so if I catch a fish on it, I'll swap it out for another one except for the 3 main ones that I like using. So I had the Panther rod out, and it hadn't caught a fish all day, and that was, you know, and I'd caught fish on the rest of the rods, but I didn't think there'd be anything out deep that day. Maybe they were up shallow, but I just, you know, continued to keep it out there. And I had the funny thing about that is I only had a 3 inch piece of skipjack on there, and but I just, you know, I'll leave it out there and we'll see what happens. It'll get bit or it won't get bit. And then, well, it got bit all right. I had that's the most violent takedown I've seen in years, and I've seen some pretty good ones over the years, and that was probably the best one I've seen. So after the initial takedown, he eventually calmed down after the initial takedown to where I could get the rod out of the rod holder. And when I started fighting the fish, he didn't really seem like a big fish at that time because he was coming towards the boat. And well, I wasn't really pulling him. He was swimming up towards the front of the boat, but I was gaining a bunch of line back, and that was the first time I actually got him all the way up to the surface, and that was the first time I seen him. And as soon as I seen him, he seen me, and he didn't want nothing to do with it. And he shot straight back down to the bottom, and I had to actually chase him down with the boat because he was, you know, spooling me at that point because he didn't want nothing to do with me or that boat. So once I finally got the trolling motor turned up all the way and we were chasing him down and I was gaining some line back, then it was all I could do was stay over top of him because he was not coming off that bottom, and if he did, I'd get about a foot and he'd take 5 more. And that back and forth went for about 30 minutes after that, to the point where I'm hurting, you know. It was, but I gotta say though that a lot of different rods that I've used over the years, I don't think would have handled a fight like that. And I was super happy that I had, you know, the Mad Katz Panther rod, or any rod would have done it, but more specifically that one, because I told my wife, because again, when we try to break in new rods, we want to, you know, we want to catch fish on them. I said, well, if we was going to break it in, this would be the best way to break it in. But I fought that fish for a while. I actually got him all the way up to the surface a second time and seen him. And then that's when I realized, you know, I didn't realize it was a state record fish. I knew it was a big fish. I knew it was probably close to the biggest one I've ever caught. And of course he didn't like that idea and he went straight back down to the bottom. So it was back and forth doing that for a while. And I finally got him up for the last time, and he still looked like a, you know, possibly the biggest fish, biggest blue I've caught, or, you know, a really good fish. Then once me and my wife finally got him in the net, then it was like he looked okay. Yep, he's definitely the biggest blue I've ever caught. And then we tried to lift him over the side of the boat. It was, yep, this is for sure the biggest blue I've ever caught. And when we finally got him in the boat, which took about everything we both had to get him in, and he's laying on the floor there, I knew that he was a 100+ pound fish. I mean, I don't know how over 100 pounds he was, but I was pretty sure he was a high 90 or low 100 pound fish. And I sat there in amazement. Me and my wife both sat there in amazement because I've never caught a catfish that big. You know, we just kind of sat there. I know for me, I sat there and I could not understand exactly what just happened. So even still to this day, it's still kind of, you know, amazing, you know, a fish like that even existed out there. I've heard of them, we've all seen them on TV, but never had one, you know, on the end of my line, let alone in my boat. You know, I've had some good fish on that I ever saw, so they just turn into fish stories. Well, luckily this one turned into a good fish story. So we had the fish laying at the bottom of the boat, and we knew we had to do something quick because I didn't want that fish to die. My overall concern when I had that fish laying there was to make sure that we could release it. So me and my wife had to slide it back in the net and then slide the net back over the side of the boat so we can get him back in the water. And then we just kind of sat there and just kind of, we didn't really know what to do at that point. I texted a friend of mine, which that turned into a phone call to Matt, and then Matt called another mutual friend of ours, and they were up at Cheatham Dam catching bait, and they called me and asked me if it was, do I believe it's a state record fish, and I said, well, I'm pretty sure it's really close. And so what they did is they dropped everything they were doing there, loaded their boat back up, and got there to the boat ramp where I was at as fast as they could, because they had a much bigger live well than what I have on my boat. Well, while we were waiting for all that to happen, I had a friend of mine and his wife were fishing the river as well that day, and they stopped by, and you know, I flagged them down so they come over and help me, you know, try to get a better weight on this fish, you know, try to get a second opinion. Do you think it's a big fish? And once he got there, he got out and got in my boat. We got him up, we tried to weigh him again, and he maxed out my scales, which go to 110 pounds, so I figured it's 120 at least, you know, to max them out that quick. So when I finally made it to the Cumberland City boat ramp, that's when Brian, Ladd, and Thomas met me there, and they also got a set of tournament scales to go up to 200 pounds. So we were able to get the fish out as quick as possible, weigh him real quick, try to get a decent weight on him, and on his scales it came out to 119 pounds. So that's when I realized, okay, all right, we got something special here. So we got him back in the live well. We're trying to tend to him, and the process was more difficult than I think we made it to be. But I have to give a big shout out to Officer Dalton Gooch. He bent over backwards. He's a TWRA officer, and he really bent over backwards to make sure that I got to release the fish. So he found the scales. He got the fishery officer involved, and he gave us escort to and from. But it took 4 hours for that process to happen. But during the whole 4 hours, I kept saying that I don't care about certifying the fish. I just want to let it go, and I was sincere about that. But everybody that was there, of course, at that time at the boat ramp, there was probably 40, 50 people standing around, and I kept saying that, you know, let's just let it go. It's just not going to happen. You know, it's just not meant to be. I'm just going to let it go. And of course, everybody was telling me, no, just wait, just wait, just wait. And good thing I did, because after I kind of was done and I'm going to let it go, and my wife talked me into an extra 15 minutes. Well, then I got the phone call from Officer Gooch, and that's when we had everything set up, and it was just a very seamless process at that point. But the funny thing was all the officers that were involved, myself and everybody was there, first time ever doing it. So luckily everything got done correctly, and everything was able to be certified. So the fish officially weighed 118 pounds, 54 inches long with a 41-inch girth. So after we got all the measurements, photographs, everything the biologists would need, plus the people in Nashville needed, we loaded the fish back up and we took it back down to the boat ramp. Once we got it back to the boat ramp, I had to do the weekly contest for the big fish of the week. So we had to do the video and the stuff for that. Of course, I was hoping the certified scales would have worked with the fish in the picture and the scale in the background, so it did. But yeah, we got that fish out of the live well, and we carried it down to the water, and we stood in that water 30 minutes, because we were not, and there's videos out there that show that, but we were not going to let that fish go until he pulled away. About 25 minutes in, he pulled away from me, and then another 5 minutes after that, he pulled away from Brandon that was out there helping me. And for me, I have a hard time when I see people kill a big fish like that, or not even on purpose, just let one die without being able to take care of it. And I was so happy. For me, that out of all this whole entire experience, it has been the best part to know that that fish is out there swimming still. And that was my main goal from the time I laid it in the bottom of my boat to the time we actually got to release it. And everybody that was there that day knew that, because that's a once in a lifetime fish, and I wasn't going to rob that from somebody else or let that part of it die, you know, with me, because I killed the fish or couldn't take care of it, you know. So for me, that was probably the overall best part of this whole experience.